just saying. What is it? Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Hari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Hari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Hari Gopijana Omagyanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Deenataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. Apologies for being late. It was scheduled to start at 1, this class, but Smarari had to come back, so then I was with Guru Maharaj. I just wanted to read from a verse from Vilapa Kusumanjali. Don't worry, it's not too deep. This is the 5th verse of Vilapa Kusumanjali. It's part of the Mangala Charanam, where Raghunath Goswami is... actually, the first 3 verses aren't really much of a Mangala Charanam because he dives straight into it. But anyway, let's not talk about that. The verses 4, 5 and 6 is where he's really asking for mercy, he's asking for blessings from his predecessors. So he begs mercy from his spiritual master. This is how anyone begins any important activity. The first thing they think of, the first personality they go to and beg mercy, blessing and empowerment from is their spiritual master. So who was Raghunath Goswami's spiritual master? Yadunandanacharya. So The fourth verse, he's paying his respects and begging mercy from his spiritual master, Yadunanacharya. And then in the fifth verse, he begs mercy from and glorifies Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that's why I chose the verse. I wish there was a screen so we could project the verse, but I'm going to read it anyway. And I'll read the translation also. And then there's a few important points which we can touch upon. Verse 5 of Vilapa Kusumanjali. Yo mam dushtarakeha nirjala maha kupada paraklama satya sandradayam buddhi prakritita swairi kriparajjubi udri atma sarojanindi charana prantam prapatya swayam Shri Damodar Satchakaratamaham Caitanya Chandram Bhaje. He says, I worship Caitanya Chandra, the independent ocean of grace, who with the ropes of his mercy suddenly raised me from the deep, waterless well of household life, which is full of limitless sufferings and so very difficult to escape. He gave me the shelter at the tips of his lotus feet, which defeat the beauty of celestial lilies, and entrusted me to the care of Sri Swarup Damodar. Please repeat. I worship Caitanya Chandra, the independent ocean of grace, who with the ropes of his mercy suddenly raised me from the deep, waterless well of household life, which is full of limitless sufferings and so very difficult to escape. Gave me the shelter of the tips of his lotus feet, which defeat the beauty of celestial lilies, and entrusted me to the care of Sri Swarup Damodar. I won't read the purport because it's about 30 pages. But Raghunath Das Goswami was, when I always loved Rup Sanatan Goswamis. But then the more through Guru Maharaj, the more he introduced us to Vilapa Kusumanjali. He's writing about it in Navaraj Mahima, and then of course he's doing a whole series of books on it. The more I learned about Raghunath Das Goswami, before he was he's Vairagya Acharya. His austerities are like no one else. Prabhupada said, don't try to imitate Raghunath Das Goswami because then you'll die. 1,000 obeisances to the deities, to Krishna daily, 2,000 obeisances to the devotees daily. He would chant 64 rounds every day. He would sleep an hour and a half to 2 hours, sometimes less. It doesn't say more at any point, sometimes less, but an hour and a half to 2 hours every day. And he would drink 1 cup of buttermilk every other day. So he was sitting on the banks of Radhakund for almost 50 years, and his swan song, the very final book that he wrote amongst many books, in his late 80s, he's almost going blind. His body is on a lifestyle like that. Physically speaking, a doctor would probably say that he's on his last legs. And he was. Last legs means, close to death. And Vilapa Kusumanjali is the outpouring from his heart. This is coming from the innermost recesses of his heart. And he's really begging and praying. So here he's expressing his gratitude to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because Mahaprabhu gave him many gifts, many wonderful gifts over the course of his life. He met Mahaprabhu earlier in his life, when he was young. Mahaprabhu was passing through Shantipur. A few days ago was a Shantipur festival. So then he met Mahaprabhu at that time. And his presence left an impression. And this is the nature of a sadhu, never mind the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They leave an impression on your heart. So I remember certain interactions that I had with certain great souls, and even though it was 15, 20, 25 years ago, I still remember their presence, the effect. It leaves an indelible mark on the heart. So Raghunath Goswami always remembered Mahaprabhu's presence. And then of course, Raghunath Goswami was from a very, very rich householder family, Zamindar family. And they were some of the richest, it was one of the richest families in India at the time, 500 years ago. They were huge landowners. And he had an uncle called Govardhan Majumdar, and his father was Hiranya Majumdar. Is that the right word? I think so. And so they were very, very rich, very, very well off. And of course, what did they want? They wanted for their son to take over the family business and to continue on as in economic development. And of course, they were Vaishnavas, but it's described that they were materialistic Vaishnavas. Mahaprabhu says that they were like worms in stool, heavy. They were devotees, they were Vaishnavas. It's described that they were funding or sponsoring brahmanas all the way up there, half from Panihati, all the way up, halfway up to Mayapur. You know, brahmanas, they often live on a river. So there's so many brahmanas living on the banks of the river Ganges, and they were sponsoring all of the brahmanas halfway up to Mayapur. So they were so wealthy and so giving, so merciful, so kind, so charitable. They were giving their wealth. But it's described that they were materialistic. And Kaviraj Goswami says that they were like worms in stool. Why? Because when Guru Maharaj says this in his introduction in Vilat 1, Vilat Kusumanjali, in the introduction where he's talking about Raghunath Goswami. And so he's Raghunath Das. Raghunath Das is encouraged to carry on with this tradition. He's married to an amazingly beautiful lady. He's given all facility in life, and all he wants to do is leave. He wants to join Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's got this fever of renunciation in his heart. His idol, just like a young boy, you know, if you're in the UK, in Hungary or wherever, you know, they have posters of their favourite football stars. Others will have a poster of their favourite music star, you know, pop stars, etc. For Raghunath Das Goswami, his idol, the person he looked up to, who did he want to be like? You know, I remember when I was young, and they asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I went through various phases. So when I was really young, I wanted to be a policeman. There was a TV show called The Bill. Do you remember The Bill? Yeah. And so I wanted to be a policeman. And then a little later, I wanted to be a pilot. When we were on the airplane coming to India to visit the family from London, I was looking and I was thinking, wow, all of the, you know, you could you know, if the door was open, you get a little glimpse of the cockpit. There's all these buttons, and it looks so complicated and interesting. You're flying a plane. So I was inspired, I wanted to fly a plane, I wanted to be a pilot. And then I settled, when I was around 10 or 11, I settled on wanting to be a banker. So that was the desire that I cultivated. And yeah, I became a banker. Fortunately or unfortunately, I think it was a good experience because I had everything I wanted, and it gives you a deeper impression. I knew from Shastra that it's not what you want and it doesn't fulfill, but it gave that experience that it's such a hollow life. Anyway, so then Raghunath Das Goswami's idol, what did he really, really want? He wanted to be like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He wanted to serve Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He wanted to join him in Jagannath Puri. And this was in his heart of hearts, this is all he wanted. And this is really important. In Krishna consciousness, the heart of the conditioned soul is mixed with so many desires, so many mixed desires. And what we have to cultivate in the innermost recesses of our heart, we really have to cultivate this desire that I want Krishna. I want to become a pure devotee. And this is a desire in my heart. And gradually chiseling away at all of the superfluous, unwanted desires. And really cultivating and growing that creeper. This is what it means to cultivate the creeper of pure devotion. One has to really understand, observe and see, okay, what are the unwanted desires in my heart? One has to know oneself, very honestly, look at oneself in the mirror and understand, who am I, where am I at? And what are the unwanted desires there in my heart? And gradually one has to chisel away at those unwanted desires. It's like, there was a sculpture. There was a sculptor. I think it was in Roman times. The word sincerity. So they asked for what is a definition of sincerity? So where does this word come from? So in Roman times there was a sculptor, and you have a big block of stone, and he's chiseling away. He's got a design in mind, and he's chiseling away and taking away everything that is unwanted. But sometimes he'd make a mistake, and he'd chisel into an area which he wasn't meant to chisel into. So they would fill that hole with wax to make it look like it was as it should be. But so one way that they would check the sculpture was that they'd put it into the sun. And if there was any wax, then that wax would melt and go away. So wax in Latin is sincerus. So they would check, they would do this sun test to remove any wax which the sculptor may put there as a cheat. So sincerity, in our terms, for us as devotees, means to remove everything which is unwanted. That's what a sculptor does. It's chiseling away and removing everything that's not meant to be there. So a sincere devotee is very conscious of what is going on in the heart, what is going on in my mind, what are the desires that I want to cultivate, and what are the desires that I've got to remove, that I have to remove from my heart. So Raghunath Das Goswami, of course, he was an Nityasiddha, a pure devotee. He had this single pointed desire, despite all of this opulence surrounding him, despite all of these possibilities and opportunities. He had everything laid out on a plate, everything anyone could wish for. But all he wanted was a service of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So we too should aspire to be similarly sincere in our cultivation of Krishna consciousness. So it describes here in the verse that through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, Raghunath Das Goswami was raised from the deep well of householder life. So what does this mean? Of course, there are various statements about householder life in Bhagavatam, and it's very important when we read those statements to understand what do they mean. Householder life in and of itself is not a deep, dark well. It can be, just like anything can be, if it's misused, if it's abused. Householder life can be a wonderful facility to practice Krishna consciousness, or it can lead to many, many attachments for an individual which bind them to this material realm. So for Raghunath Das Goswami, there was so much potential for that householder life to be a deep, dark well. And actually, I was just at the temple, and Guru Maharaj went there to observe and give his blessings to Atma Rampur. He's a disciple of Gaura Govinda Maharaj, and he was taking sannyas. So in Radha Madhav's temple room, it was a beautiful ceremony. There was another devotee called Govinda Nandapur. He's a disciple of Bhakti Chara Maharaj. Atma Rampur, a disciple of Gaura Govinda Maharaj. Of course, both gurus have unfortunately left the world, and so Jeb Thakur Maharaj was giving them both sannyas, and Guru Maharaj was also there, and he was speaking about sannyas. So I'm kind of filled with those impressions from that wonderful ceremony. And Guru Maharaj was just speaking about how both Guru Maharaj and Jeb Thakur Maharaj and Bhakti Purushottam Maharaj gave addresses on the topic of sannyas. And Guru Maharaj was saying how sannyas doesn't mean that you do nothing, that you sit in the forest and just meditate. He quoted from the Gita, Krishna says, 6.1, Anashita karmafalam karam karyam karotiya na sasyanyasi cha yogi cha na niragni na chakriya. He says, very typically of Guru Maharaj, he says, sannyas means there is a result. And it means, he said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explained that how do you measure the value of a preacher? How many temples has he opened? How many devotees has he made? How many books has he written? Guru Maharaj said, and how many books has he distributed? And so he was just saying how there's the Caitanya Charitamrita marathon going on right now. There's one of Jaya Prabhu Maharaj's sannyas disciples, Bhagwat Maharaj is called, and he's vowed to distribute 5,000 sets of Caitanya Charitamrita. The numbers in India are just on another scale. So they've done 3,000. They started this campaign about a week ago, I think, a week, 10 days ago. And they've distributed 3,000, or they've sponsored at least and sold 3,500 Caitanya Charitamrita sets already. But they have another 1,500 sets to go. So Guru Maharaj is encouraging the devotees to sponsor and buy sets of Caitanya Charitamrita. And he was saying, so yes, sannyas doesn't mean that you have to, that you just sit there, relax and just meditate. It means you have to preach, and preaching means it has to be a result. And I was reflecting that it was nice to hear Guru Maharaj speak like this, because we hear this less and less. In recent years, you hear Guru Maharaj's emphasis is, or when he speaks, naturally he's speaking about what he's meditating on.